Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. A quick reminder, support the transmission. If you want to keep seeing new episodes, podcasts of Geopolitics and Empire, become a paid subscriber on the Substack, a little over $9 a month or a little over $90 a year. We do private weekly group Zoom chats with paid subscribers only to shoot the breeze on current events. We bring back past podcast guests as well to do a live Q&A. And I do a weekly wrap up and commentary of the most important news of the week, which a lot of people find valuable. So find me on geopoliticsandempire.substack.com. You can also donate, buy me a coffee, Wise, donor box, that sort of stuff, and purchase a consult if you want to chat with me about anything. And our sponsor this month, of course, is Mikkel Thorpe's Expat Money Summit, taking place next month, very soon, October 7th to the 11th. It will be all online for free. All you need to do is register. The link is in the description. So hit that link and register to watch for free. If you can't catch the 24-hour free replay live stream, then you can purchase the upgrade. And if you decide to do that, if you use the promo Empire, you'll get $100 off. Most of the headline speakers have been guests of mine: Ron Paul, Scott Horton, Casey, Mark Faber. So check that out. It's basically all about, I like to say, preparing for the new world order, the Great Reset, internationalization, that sort of stuff, offshore real estate, finding your network and that sort of thing. And don't neglect my affiliates. I've got a new one, Gabriel Custodiet, Escape the Technocracy. He's got a course. You can find the link in the description below. If you use the link or the code Geopolitics, you get 15% off. And it's basically teaching you how to escape the technocracy. I'm taking the course and very much loving it. Joining us for the first time on Geopolitics and Empire is Scott Armstrong of Rebunked, who's the host, producer of Rebunked News, marketing director at Unjected.com, the world's first and largest unvaccinated dating site. And he's the co-host and producer of the Unjected Show. He's all over the place in alternative media. You'll see him with the InfoWars crew. He was previously with Ryan Christian of TLAV and many others. And he's also a musician who just dropped his fantastic debut album from Rebunked Records, Universal Basic. Awesome. Welcome to Geopolitics and Empire, Scott.
All right, boy. Thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. And I'm not with the InfoWars crew. I don't get anybody, just to get anybody as yet. I do have a channel on Band.video, which is kind of cool. But yeah. So I don't want to. But otherwise, man, dude, yes, thank you. Thank you for the intro. That's so cool. And I'm just very grateful to be here. I've known you for a while, and it's an honor to be on the flagship show, Geopolitics and Empire. So very cool.
Yeah, and what I meant was the camaraderie. You hang out with the folks from some of the InfoWars folks.
Frank, yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, a couple of them are on the album, so yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah.
And it's cool. And we got to hang out last year out in Texas, and so much is going on. I had you on my multiple times on my old TNT radio show, and it's crazy. Yep. This weekend, TNT radio is turning out the lights. It was a good run, but that's the state of media. It's difficult to survive in this environment. Maybe get your thoughts on that a little bit later. But first, since when I have a guest on the first time, usually I want to get sort of their big picture backstory. If you could tell us a bit about yourself and then how you sort of got into this alternative independent media space.
Yeah, man. Thank you. So, yeah, man, I don't even know where to even start. I guess I could say I kind of got red pilled in like 2011. I would say I remember watching the Zeitgeist movie, and that's when I first learned about the third tower that fell on 9/11, right? And I was like as Richard Grove said, I was incredulous, and I was like, wait a minute, that can't possibly be true. So looked into it, and that led me to a movie called September 11th, The New Pearl Harbor by Massimo Mazzucco, which is a great movie that kind of takes a lot of it dispels a lot of what do they call them? The 9/11 debunkers, like the people that debunk all the claims of the 9/11 truthers. And it kind of says, okay, fine. Well, if that's what your claim is, then what about this, and this? The movie's great because it doesn't make any real claims. It just says, well, here's how all of the things that you're saying are impossible. And so it kind of gets you thinking like, yeah, okay. So really, that was my biggest rabbit hole in the beginning. Before that, I was pretty much just like, a rah, like we need to bomb the Middle East because they hate our freedom type of guy, right? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know, dude. I was in my 20s. Like, I don't freaking know, dude. No concept to even understand anything outside of that, man. And so that was really the first thing that kind of led me to be like, whoa, dude, this is really interesting. And then fast forward several years, I started listening to podcasts, got into some of the very first ones I came across were Tinfoil Hat with Sam Tripoli, the Grimerica, Higher Side Chats with Greg Carlwood, and those conspiracy guys with Gordo. Shout out. So those shows kind of gave me a big, broader picture of maybe some of the other stuff. And then I really things started to click. And it was always just kind of like a hobby and just kind of like, yeah, this is interesting. It kind of felt good to be the guy that kind of knew the things that other people didn't, and it's fun to be like, yeah, well, what about this? You know what I mean? But that was an innocent time, right? There was an innocent time in the world where everybody could have different political affiliations and it was fine. Like your buddy was kind of a liberal and was like, yeah, he's just kind of a goofy guy. You know what I mean? Like it's like not even a big deal. Who cares? And then 2020 happened and I was working as a drug and alcohol counselor and just an office job, just a regular dude. And when March 2020 happened and then the lockdown started occurring, I was living in Oregon at the time. So Oregon was particularly hit hard with the tyranny and the nonsense. And so immediately my alarm bells were going off. I was like, hold on. So and of course, like then I got like pretty big into Alex Jones and InfoWars and all those guys. And Alex was kind of like my daily listen at the time. And probably starting about 2018 or so. And then when COVID started coming around, like I was listening to the chatter, like what he was talking about. And I was like, dude, this is the new world order right here. Like it has all of the telltale signs of what he's been talking about forever. Right. And so to me, my alarm bells went up and I was like, okay, this is something like first of all, we're being lied to. This is not being characterized properly. And the breach of our freedom, liberties, I could see them just disappearing. And I'm like, once these are gone, like that might be it. And so I was very firm in the beginning about like no masking, like not going to wear the mask because if I capitulate to that, then it's going to be the next thing and then the next thing and the next thing. If we can just all hold the line with the masks, then it won't go any further than that. And also just in the interest of trying to figure out what was going on, a couple of my friends and I started a show, a podcast called the Truthzilla podcast. And that was just born out of really what it was we felt like we saw everything that was going on from a different perspective and we wanted to help wake everybody else up to what was going on. We needed to get them all up to speed real quick about all the things, right? In order for them to even have a context to understand what was going on. And so, the first few episodes of that show were like, the first one was Tower 7. Because for me, that was the thing that kind of smashed everything open for me. So I felt like that'd be a good place to start. Be like, hey, just a simple question. Just pose the question. Like, did you know that a third tower fell on 9/11? Everyone's like, no. And of course, there's Tower 6. I know all you hardcore truthers out there, they get at me. Whenever I talk about Tower 7, there's always some guy in the chat like, well, what about Tower 6? Great. We'll talk about that some other time. But today we're talking about Tower 7 because Tower 7 is great because there's so much evidence. Like there was the architects and engineers for 9/11 truth study commissioned through the University of Alaska Fairbanks that determined that no way it could have gone down the way they said. So anyway, there's so much evidence around Tower 7. And I feel like that's the crux of so many different, you can start there and plant a very firm foot. You can get a strong foothold in we're being lied to and work your way out from there. So I felt that's a great place to start. And then we moved on to like the childhood vaccination schedule, MK Ultra, just kind of talking about what some people will call conspiracies, but more so ones that are widely accepted as true. Like you could find a Wikipedia page on it and it like says like, yeah, they did bring Nazis over in Operation Paperclip. And, these things that people don't really know about, but it's important to understand to see the big picture. So that was really the start of that show. And then we started interviewing people and that's when it really kind of took a different turn. And then we started just seeing that like, okay, if we interview people and get their perspective, we can learn a lot more. And so that's when we started reaching out to like doctors and scientists. And we had like some pretty noteworthy people on early on in that podcast. Like I remember we had Dr. Peter McCullough on like fairly early on, like before he became like a huge, like he was out there being pretty vocal, but this would have been like, June, July, maybe August 2020, maybe fall of 2020, somewhere around there. And we were really just trying to get into, what the heck was going on. Like this is all born out of just our genuine curiosity to try to understand what we were seeing. And And so that's how my podcast journey started. And from there, man, it's just kind of just been all over the place. Like I ended up leaving that show shortly before moving here to Nashville, Tennessee. There was several things in Oregon that were kind of keeping me there. Like by this time it was like winter 2021, and I was born and raised in Oregon. I lived there my entire life. I've never lived anywhere else. And, I'm an Oregon boy through and through, Pacific Northwest. And so you're used to the fact that it rains like 8 months out of the year. And it's not like it's like a constant slow drizzle rain, and it's just gray skies. And like by the time I got to winter 2021, I was feeling kind of demoralized. Like I was not really feeling like I was thriving, and I was like, okay, I need to get out of here. Right. And I'd already stepped away from the band that I was in, but big shout out to Hot Piranha. That's the band out there. You guys, if you want some good music, go check out Hot Piranha. They felt like I wasn't, because the podcasting was kind of the priority. They felt like I wasn't really prioritizing the band as much as I should have been. And so it was kind of like a mutual thing. And I ended up leaving the band. It's fine. I'm still friends with all those guys. It's not even a big deal. They're actually on the album. There's a song, an unreleased song that we all recorded together that never got released. And so that's on the album. So we're all cool. But I decided to prioritize the podcast. And so I stepped away from the band. I was working at this job as a counselor, and I ended up getting fired essentially over the vaccines. It wasn't directly because of the shots. I wasn't fired because I opposed the shots. It was because I was causing a ruckus in that building, dude. I was emailing, like sending out agency-wide emails. So, you know what I mean? Like I was not, and I felt like I handled it well. Like they sent out an agency-wide email that said, we're going to be mandating the vaccine for every employee. If you have until this date to take it as a condition of employment. And I sent an agency-wide email in response, and I said, well, if you want any information about medical or religious exemptions, just let me know. I have a lot of resources around that, and you're not alone. It was essentially exactly. I posted on my Facebook recently because someone sent it to me. I didn't have that email, but someone I used to work with sent it to me. I was like, yes, that's so good. And very proud of myself for that. But anyway, they came after me hard. They're like, oh, are you the official exemption captain? Is that part of your job description? And blah, blah, blah. And they just turned into this whole big commotion, dude. So anyway, long story short, I didn't last very long there. And then the Truthzilla podcast, I ended up leaving that show because we kind of had different visions about where it was going. And I just thought that, they can do that and I'll go do my own show, basically. These things happen, creative differences. Again, no hard feelings, but like, I found myself in this place where all of a sudden, all of the things that I felt were keeping me in Oregon, like the job, the band, the podcast, had all just fell away like within a very short period of time. And I felt like the universe was just saying, get out. So that's when I moved to Nashville and ended up connecting with Ryan from Last American Vagabond. I worked with him for a couple years. And again, like I just, I had no hard feelings. Maybe it's me. I don't know, dude. Maybe it's so no, but it's cool. But a lot of love to Ryan. Like, dude, I have nothing but respect. Ryan is like, one of the leaders of this whole alternative media scene, and I look up to him quite a bit. You know what I mean? So, but I decided to focus on my own projects, and yeah, man. So Rebunked was born out of me leaving Truthzilla. The Rebunked news, whatever. Like, it's basically like, when somebody says that's a debunked conspiracy theory, and then like 6 months later it comes true, and the New York Times is like, yeah, actually there might be a little myocarditis going around. I don't know. Like that's what I call rebunked news. It goes from debunked to rebunked when they can finally admit that, okay, what we said was debunked is actually true. So anyway, and then from there, dude, it's just been a wild ride. And, for me, like the podcast thing, it's like I don't make any money on podcasting. I literally don't make any money at all. Like I've got I shouldn't say that. I've got a few monthly subscribers on Substack, and I'm very grateful for those people. And people throw some money in the hat every now and then. But it's like for me, the podcasting is my kind of a way to connect with people, and all of the other things that I'm involved with that I do make income on, like have all been born out of podcasting, basically. Like, working with Unjected, the musical thing. That's not really like, well, you know what I mean? It's just like all these projects that I get to do, and all the people I get to collaborate with, and everybody that I know and it's all the whole life I've kind of built here is all a result of podcasting. So I see the value in podcasting in the kind of peripheral projects that get born out of it. So yeah, man, I don't know. It's just been a crazy last few years for sure. Like I just work for myself now, and just like every day is a little bit different. And I do run my own handyman business too. So I basically, when I moved to Nashville, I just started putting it out there like on Facebook. I've got a truck and some tools if anybody needs some help. And I've just, pretty much been doing that ever since. And it's cool because I can kind of do more or less of it as kind of the other projects demand, because the other projects are the priority. It kind of gives me the means to support myself while I focus on the other projects. And so if there's like a particular week where I need to, because like Unjected, the new app just launched this week, which is really cool. And so like a week like this week, I just wouldn't book any jobs. And then that way I can focus on Unjected and this and that. So it's like, it's pretty cool little place I'm at right now. I'm very, very, very grateful. And that's kind of it in a nutshell, a long, big nutshell. But
yeah, it's hard to make a living doing podcasting. I still often think about maybe I should get a part-time or go back to being a professional, still keeping the podcast going. Yeah. For now, I think my paid subscribers on Substack, they're paying awesome. They're paying my bills. Still not what I was making as a professional, but yeah, we're chugging along. And I love, COVID was in another way. It was, a nightmare, a horror movie. Yeah. But it was it allowed, it pushed many people to reinvent ourselves. I was sort of doing that even before COVID. I was going to completely new countries and just reinventing myself. But it pushed me even further to. It's really a good thing to be able to reinvent yourself, try new stuff. Yeah. And you mentioned Peter McCullough in 2020. It's, for me, one of my funniest moments was January 2020. I was the first to interview Dr. Francis Boyle, the Bioweapons Act author. And the next day, I saw my face on the front page of InfoWars and Alex Jones doing a play-by-play of my interview with Boyle. And I would catch them, though. InfoWars would be like, we were the first to interview Boyle. And I was like, oh, yeah. Excuse me, Alex. InfoWars, it was me. And actually, in the first chapter of his book, Medical Tyranny, Francis Boyle, it's the transcript of our interview. But, I like the word. But that InfoWars does. I just one of those funny moments. And by the way, no hard. I hope you don't have any hard feelings, Scott. In the wrestling match, I think I probably threw a few punches.
Yeah, dude. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, like, you got to put a link in like the episode description, dude. No hard feelings. Like, that's a well-deserved, maybe not deserved, but like it was a fair match. And dude, yeah. Shout out to Ryan, the independent review, my dude. He does these funny little. Basically makes like wrestling characters out of all of us and makes them like fight. Dude, that's so fun.
That was hilarious. I defeated everyone. And so I was just laughing. It was hilarious. The link is in the description. People can watch it if they haven't. Further thoughts on the media space, podcasting, independent media. For me, this is an interesting topic. We had a wave of censorship in the late 2010s, 2020s. That seems to have subsided for now. They've given us some breathing room. I feel like they're refining, they're developing new strategies, new technologies. I think for now they're moving more towards, the CEO of X, Yacarino, what's her name, Linda
Yacarino, yep.
Yeah, where they say freedom of speech but not reach. So I feel like now they're pushing more for the shadow ban model, where you're there but you're posting into the ether, and not before where they just flat out deplatform you. And so, and I think, and the other issue is now they're bringing into law thought crime. So basically, people are getting visits now. Jeremy Kaufman of Odyssey Library just got visited by the feds for thought crime. Saw that. Yeah. Some of my past, people are getting the FBI raiding their homes now in Europe. People are waiting jail sentences for thought crime. So you can get visited, fined, jailed. And so thoughts on sort of this censorship space.
Oh my gosh. There's a term for that. And I learned this from Last American Vagabond. It was called stochastic terrorism, where that basically means it's like kind of, and in that context, what it means is like your words are what incite violence. So therefore they can make an argument saying that because your words, your rhetoric could cause real life violence, then the words themselves need to be, patrolled or policed or monitored or criminalized even. And so, I was just talking to a friend yesterday actually, and at the Vaxxed 3 premiere, I went to the Vaxxed 3 premiere, and this kind of, I can tie that in too a little bit here, where it was, a case that I remember that kind of was one of the earlier examples of this was like with Pizzagate, the whole Pizzagate thing, where they had a guy walk into the pizza place with an AR-15 and fired a round. And that one round just happened to go through the computer and went through the hard drive of the pizza place. So whatever was on the hard drive, we no longer have access to, which is suspicious in and of itself. But I remember the rhetoric around all that was that he was driven to violence. These crazy conspiracy theorists and all of their crazy conspiracies drove this insane man to go walk into a pizza parlor with a rifle and fire a round. And so they can crack down on conspiracy theorists by, attacking the rhetoric that led him to do that. And then I remember also in 2020, this is before I moved to Nashville, but there was the Nashville bombing. There was a Christmas Day bomb that went off. There was a bomb that went off on Christmas here in Nashville in downtown, and it hit what they call the AT&T building. And I was picturing, like, when they say AT&T building is like a little server, like it was a place where it was like a little, like a T-Mobile store or something like that. Like that's what I was picturing. I had no idea. The AT&T building's like the biggest building in Nashville. It's like this giant building that looks like Batman. They call it the Batman building. Huge building. And an explosion went off in front of that building. And it was very suspicious, but I remember seeing on the news afterwards, they immediately were like, he was like a QAnon crazy far-right conspiracy theorist. And with all the madness of 2020, I was like, oh boy, here we go. They're going to come after conspiracy theorists. Now I thought that was going to be like the reason they were going to use to crack down on even more so on speech, because back then, it was just insane, absolutely insane. And, the reason why I feel is like they needed to control the narrative to such a degree that anything that, and I can pin it back to one of the reasons I think now looking back, they had to have complete control over the narrative because they had an agenda going on. They had something very specific that they were trying to achieve. And anybody who spoke with any sort of authority or credibility outside of their approved narrative was a threat to what their operation that they were trying to do. Now, I don't want to give away too much, but in the movie Vax 3 that I watched last night, they make a very compelling case that, they show a bunch of different, and it's basically about the last few years. It's about, the COVID situation, from the vaccines and the hospital protocols. And they did a real heavy focus on the hospital protocols and the amount of death that those caused, right? When you see like the COVID deaths, this and that, it's like, well, really, most of them are hospital protocol deaths, really, and they were saying, and then, the whole movie is like interviews from family members. So they drove this bus all over the country and just interviewed people who were affected by either the vaccines or the hospital protocols. And so the whole movie is just firsthand accounts, people being interviewed, basically. It's gut wrenching. It's an intense movie. But, in the movie, then they kind of make one of the conclusions they make is that the nurses, the doctors, the hospital staff, because of the propaganda, because of what they were seeing, they perceived anti-vaxxers as less than human. The dehumanization worked to such an extent that they felt okay with killing them, basically. That they were driven to being okay and felt that it was like if someone showed up that was unvaccinated and they put them on a ventilator, then if they died, great. That's what they deserve. Like that's one of the conclusions they make. And I was like, I can really see that. I'd kind of hadn't really, like, to be honest, I hadn't really taken it to that extreme. There's a lot of people talking in the movie where they overheard nurses and doctors saying, like, overheard them talking in the hallway, like, yeah, he's unvaccinated, I hope he gets everything he deserves and all this stuff. Like, that's what the propaganda will do. It like drove these people to literally be okay with like murdering these other people that they look down upon. And you have to have a strong censorship machine in place in order for that to be carried out. So it's like they had to censor. They couldn't have people out there telling the truth with a loud enough megaphone, and anybody that did is a huge threat. I mean, like, to the extent, yeah. So yeah, crazy, dude.
Yeah, I always reference the book. I have it right behind me. I think it's Milton Mayer. They Thought They Were Free, written in the 1950s. And he was a German-American Jewish guy. And he found dozen average Germans who sort of went along with the Nazi totalitarianism. Just everyday people, bakers, teachers. It's it's the same. Totalitarianism has different flavors throughout history. And it's the same. It's always, human nature doesn't change. It doesn't change. And so it's just like what you just explained is what happened in the 1930s, is what happened in the 2020s.
Yeah.
What's going to happen again? I'm certain it's going to happen again. And let me ask you about the well, your music, and we can explore further conspiracy themes with your music. And I think there are a lot of points here I want to bring up. Well, first tell us what brought you to make the record. I think it's really good. I'll be purchasing.
Thanks,
I haven't
man.
had time yet. I've listened to some of the songs, on the music videos. They're really well made. I'm going to be purchasing from the website, rebunkedrecords.com, because you get an extra track if you do that instead of going over to iTunes. I'm sure they take a bigger chunk of your profits. And so tell us about the record, Universal Basic. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, here you go, guys. Here it is. I got some CDs right here. You can get CDs too, rebunkedrecords.com. And if you look, the album cover is like, it's kind of hard to see. I don't know, but there's like, it's like a logging photo from like the early 1900s where it's like these folks with like a ladder that they made themselves. And it's like literally like a 40-foot round. Like if that guy's maybe 6 foot, then I don't know what is that, like 30 feet at least, around like a 30-foot diameter tree that they cut down and with like a saw, like a hand saw. And so for me, that's like what the drive and motivation and like what these people like, it's just unfathomable levels of like what I just call crushing, just crushing so hard we can't even wrap our minds around it these days. Anyway, so the idea, like the universal basic, awesome. It just popped into my head one day and I was like, that's pretty fun. And, because everybody's like freaking out, universal basic income and all this stuff. And yeah, it's like, we got to keep our eyes on that sort of thing. But really, there's so much like, not only from the establishment, they want us in a state of fear. That is quite obvious because when we're in fear, we're not operating at our highest capacity. We are making impulsive choices. We're angry, agitated. We're not our best when we're fearful. Now, I would say in the truther world, there's a lot of fear as well. Like that's a with social media, they know that when they irritate us or they aggravate us, they get the cortisol going. That's when we engage with their platforms the most. I would argue, like some of the like, I would say like Daily Wire, they make a lot of money like showing images and videos of half naked children dressed like little boys, dressed as women. They're calling them trans boy, whatever, like that whole thing. They sensationalize it. There's no attempt to like kind of rectify the situation. It's all about what I would say like sensationalizing, and like InfoWars does it a little bit too, but it's like, they like, look at this naked boy in a strip club, get angry and give us money. You know what I mean? It's like there's a fear economy in the truther business as well. There's so it's coming at us on all sides. And one of the themes throughout the whole album, I would say, is if you take a step back from all that and you just like look around, like in your day-to-day life, like with your family, going for a walk. Like for me, I got a new dog about 4 months ago. Like, and then just like if I, put effort into my life, it's like my life is awesome, dude. Like I'm not, and I could go on and on about this, but really what the end of the day is like, it's if you take a step back, get out of the little fear bubble and realize that things are pretty freaking awesome. Like really, really, really awesome. And if there aren't, then there's things you can do about that. So that's kind of like what the overall, like really I wanted each song to have like a bit of empowerment. And there's, and just like influence, like the very, very last song. Like, I hope that you guys listen to the whole album start to finish because it takes you on a ride. Like the songs were in order for a reason. It's like a trajectory. It's like it speeds up and then it kind of slows down in the middle and then it kind of speeds back up again to a giant crescendo at the end. And then it drops you off and gives you a nice, easy landing. And the last song, it's basically like a double song. There's 2 songs in one on there. And it's like the very last song I want to encourage you to listen to, of course, because like, it's just like, what does it make us if we're living in fear? Like, who am I if I'm living in fear? Like one of the lines is like, what does that make me if I am afraid of a bunch of old pedophiles that stand on a stage and tell me how to live? Like really? Are we going to stand there and just live in fear because these pedophiles are up there telling us the way we should live our lives and what we should be fearful of? No, absolutely not. And so, the last song is like a very strong message of like disobedience, Like do not obey. Do not obey. Right? A little earlier you mentioned the just like how things never change. Like human nature is always the same, man. And the very last, I don't want to spoil too much because it's a fun little spoiler at the end, but it's something that was written in 1577. And when you listen to it, you're like, oh my God, like nothing has ever changed, dude, about like the human nature, the disparity of like the ruling class and us. It's like exactly the same thing as what we're dealing with right now. And it's just like, damn. Okay. So then that tells you a lot more. It tells you like, okay, if it's nothing has changed in 500 years, then odds of it changing tomorrow or by me being afraid of it are literally zero. So I refuse to live in fear, but I can do things in my own life. I could be proactive in my own life. And whenever they come out and tell me I need to do something in order to keep this, and it's like, well, I guess I don't get to keep that because I ain't going to do that. And that's what it comes down to. So,
yeah, for me, that's biblical wisdom. One of my favorite books from the beginning was Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. And really, it's just people don't change. And I just started exercising again, just in so small example. And I felt so good. And I'm going to keep doing it and just things like that, and I'm not a depressed person. I'm not living in fear. And I feel like I just thought of yet another example, a doctor people who go into medicine and become doctors and who are able to open up people and look at body parts and all that sort of stuff. They're able to look into this without going crazy or having fear. They have this ability to look into this nasty, dark stuff and, still function normally. And that's how I do with the podcast, looking at all this crazy amount of evils, the digital gulags, the nuclear war, the eugenics, transhuman stuff that they're doing, the trans stuff, and stay sane. It doesn't bother me. I'm able to look into that abyss and continue on. And I do want to ask you about the music.
Sure.
You mentioned Dave Grohl, and I like that your music, those of the other dissident musicians, Brad Skistimas, 5 times.
Yes.
August.
Shout out to Brad.
Yeah, I've had him on the podcast, and then I hung out with him twice. I think the last year at the American Liberty Awards, I was hanging out with him at the table during the awards.
By the way, he should have got the award. I don't know what they were thinking. Damn it, dude. I was like, why would you give it to somebody that's not even here? Dude, he's right there. Come on. Like, anyway, that's my own little, I'm just going to put that out there. I was like, what are you guys thinking? This is bullshit. I had a little thing with it, but that's
so behind the scenes there. And I hung out with him again in Acapulco earlier this year and at Acapulco. But honestly, like, I can play his full album. I love every song. There's melody. So this has been one of my complaints with popular music in the last couple of years, that, you listen to the latest Metallica album. There's no melody. There's no melodies. It's just like ham-fisted. It's like, I cannot listen to this. And when I listen to 5 times August, he's got melodies. He's got the lyrics, like important messages. That's another thing with popular music. There's no important political messages or other such messages. The Defiant, right? Great music there. Yours, I can't even think now of others. And I've listened to tried to listen to the last few Foo Fighters albums, and it's like, I can't. And I find myself listening more to 5 times August, Defiant. Now your music than Bruce Springsteen, Foo Fighters, all of these people who capitulated under, COVID 1984. Let me see if I can just play a short clip from your music video. Let's see. Share.
Is this "We Don't Need You No More"? Is that one? Oh, because that's the one with the Dave Grohl. That's the one with my boy Dave Grohl.
Yeah, I think. Let's see.
Not my boy.
Play.
Not my boy. Wait, this has turned into I kind of like developed like I'm somehow it's like this one-sided
we needed you rage against a machine. Looks like you traded in your blood for a mask and vaccines. Now all I see is blood and hatred in the air.
I'm a jihad against Dave Grohl, man.
You don't got too scared. You Want me to trust the ones you raged against that made you wealthy? Guess what? Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Tell your boy Maynard he can eat a dick too, and the whole entire Run DMC crew. Well, I'm a sub.
So that's a short clip. All the links in the description, and I think the music video is really well made. Neil Young. I don't even know Tool. Was it Tool you mentioned?
Maynard, yeah, he was on Joe Rogan, and he said these COVID anti-vaxxers can eat a dick. I'm like, oh yeah, well you can eat a dick too, bro. And so some vulgarity in the song, but it's like justifiable vulgarity. But yeah, Dave Grohl gets it the worst in that song, I would say, and stuff.
And and by the way, I mean, this is just gossip news. It's out there, but this week it came out. Dave Grohl's publishing a new book, I think, but it came, he's married with 3 children, so he just he made a new child with someone other than his wife. Frank Turner, whose music I've enjoyed as well, the British folk rock musician. Same thing happened there. He's breaking up with his wife because he cheated. And he's like, I don't know what's going on. A preacher that I listened to this morning, I heard the news that he's stepping down because he had an inappropriate relationship. So I don't know what's going on, but just maybe the thought on how, and when I was young, music was one of my idols. One of my idolatries was I had like 500 plus CDs. I've seen so many bands: Metallica, U2, Killing Joke, the Pogues. Like I can just go on and on. So the Tea Party, Canadian rock band, and just so many. And I was obsessed with music. And so I know so many bands, and just during COVID 1984, it's just unbelievable, Scott, the amount, the quantity. Bruce Springsteen, Dave Grohl, Tool,
all of them.
Rage Against the Machine. I just can't even think of them all. Just capitulated. And all these decades, they've been talking about against the system. Tom Morello, I think he's Harvard educated. He's part of the corporate blob now. Like, just setting his music aside, his political speech is like, they really did, a good job lobotomizing whatever this psychological warfare was. They've done really, I got to hand it to the CIA, Tavistock. They did a stand-up job being able to rewire people's brains. And so Neil Young, right, another one. And so your thoughts on what? I've asked 5 times August that question. And I called him. He was like the Bob Dylan of our age, really. Just his acoustic music. And so your thoughts on what happened?
Totally. Well, yeah. So that song's called "We Don't Need You No More," and the whole premise is that all of these musicians have sold out. Rage Against the Machine used to be my favorite, but in the song, I'm like, where were you when we needed you? Like, we could have used you back there. Like, I thought you were against like tyranny and all that shit, but apparently not. So, that song goes a little hard. It actually features John Bound from InfoWars, and then Rob Dew from InfoWars plays bass on there. But it's just sickening, man. It's just like sickening, and to the point where it's like, okay, fine. Well, you guys, when it mattered, like, you guys weren't the people that maybe we thought you were, and so now we don't need you no more. So guess what? We got 5 times August. We've got new bands that are coming out, new people that are creating music, and we don't need you no more. We're done. You're gone. Your era's over. Like, thank you, but have a nice day. And so, like, on social media, while I've been promoting that song, like, the kind of the catchphrase I've been leaning into is like from the Dark Knight, the Joker, when he's like, "Tell your men they work for me now," right? So that's been what I've been saying to Dave Grohl. I'm like, hey, Dave Grohl, tell your men they work for me now. You know what I'm saying? It's like, although I don't want his men actually working for me, because no, not at all. But yeah, dude. And then like the whole punk scene, like all the punk people, like everybody's like, oh, you have these punk shows that were like, there's one example in the video I show where it's like, there was a punk show, I think it was like in Florida, where they were charging like $20 for vaccinated people and $1,000 a ticket for unvaccinated people. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, they just lost the plot, man. And like, where were all the people that were raging against the machine? And now it's just like, okay, fine. Then I guess you've lost your standing, you've lost your privilege, and we don't need you no more. So that was kind of the genesis of that song, and has some very choice words. And yeah, like I said, Dave Grohl gets it the worst at the end. I dedicated like a whole verse to him because, for lots of reasons. Like, for one, they were one of the bands that were most adamant about requiring proof of vaccination at their concerts. I've seen interviews with Dave Grohl saying how like important it was. They felt how important it was for them to have, those measures in place, how they actually had like vaccination clinics like outside of their concerts, to like injecting people like at the concerts, which doesn't make any sense because, according to their narrative, it's, you're not fully vaccinated until 2 weeks after taking your second injection. So if you're vaccinating somebody at the concert and then letting them in, that doesn't fit with the narrative. So the whole thing is just like bananas, dude. So, dude, I learned this this is so crazy. So I'm just going to tell you a little crazy conspiracy I learned about Dave just recently. So everybody, there's the conspiracies around like, Nirvana, like he wanted his day in the spotlight and Kurt was standing in his way sort of thing. And maybe some of you don't know, he's the drummer for Nirvana. That was how he kind of got his start. But okay, so let's see here. So the drummer from the Foo Fighters, right? His name is Taylor Hawkins. So he died in March of 2020. So a lot of people remember the drummer of the Foo Fighters died in March of 2020. And immediately everybody was like, vax injury, like that was the immediate cry. Well, at the time, all that was like the era of died suddenlies. So pretty much every sudden death was kind of looked at as very, especially like he was like 50, like a healthy dude. So I looked into this a little bit, and in the newspaper, all the news outlets were saying that he died of a suspected drug overdose, right? And they said they found like 12 drugs in his system. Well, as it turns out, he did overdose in 2001 and he'd been sober ever since. So he apparently smoked weed occasionally, but this is all from a Rolling Stone interview in 2021 where he said he'd been sober off everything else for over 20 years. And, and he was as healthy as a horse. Like his doctor said that you got the heart of a runner. You know what I mean? Like just basically super healthy. And, of course, there's a chance he might have died of a drug overdose, but to this day, they've never released any toxicology reports. They've never released an official cause of death ever. Okay, so I had a guy on my show last week who was a roadie for the Foo Fighters. He worked on their live productions, and he said that Dave Grohl was known for going around and pressuring everybody into taking the vaccine. He pressured the guy I interviewed firsthand, guy saying like, yeah, Dave Grohl came directly up to me and was just like, come on, man, really? You're not, come on, dude. Like just pressuring him to take the vaccine. According to Steve Kirsch, he has a firsthand testimony of a guy who said that Taylor Hawkins, the drummer, was opposed to the vaccines, the masking, the mandates, and that Dave Grohl pressured Taylor into taking the shots. And it looks like he may have been pressured into doing that. So now I've kind of laid out the argument that through Dave Grohl's peer pressure, Taylor Hawkins might have taken the shot, which ultimately led to a sudden death type incident. Now it gets really crazy because so Taylor died in March of 2022. And again, this is Steve Poikonen that told me this. Okay. He was on my show last week and he's like, yeah. And then there's all this. So I'm going to tell you what he told me. He said, yeah. So then there was this movie called Studio 666. Do you know about this? See, I didn't know about this until last week. And I'm like, I'm the Dave Grohl like bashing guy. And I didn't even learn about this. So I'm telling everybody this now. So there's a movie called Studio 666 that came out in February 2022, a month before Taylor died, so Studio 666 is a movie about the Foo Fighters. It's the Foo Fighters playing themselves. I haven't seen the movie yet. I probably need to. But in the movie, apparently Dave Grohl gets possessed by like a demon or the devil or something, and he murders Taylor Hawkins in the movie by decapitating him with a drum cymbal. So the movie comes out in February 2022 where Dave Grohl murders his drummer, Taylor Hawkins, in the movie, and then a month later, Taylor Hawkins dies in real life. Whoa. Okay. So anyway, that was my truth.
I have not seen the movie, but I've known about that. And I'm almost finished. It's been like a few months now. I've been reading that book about Laurel Canyon by Dave McGowan.
Oh, wow.
I think. And it's like, if you understand that, you'll understand that basically the music industry is one arm of, if you think of the New World Order, the globalists, they've got the information control, right? Social media, internet. They've got the music. They've got Hollywood. And you read Laurel Canyon, and it's factually, all of this stuff is sourced, and it's just mind blowing the work that Dave McGowan did, where he points out what you just described. That there's endless tales of that same stuff, where you've got military intelligence links to the musicians, occult stuff, esoteric stuff going on, just nonstop strange murders, and it's absolutely insane. And so I'm wondering what was going on with Dave Grohl. It's too weird. It's too weird that they make a movie and then he dies, and then of course there's steeped in occult stuff that movie, and And what do you think, just going back to Grohl pushing everyone to get injected, what do you think was his motivation? I'm thinking it's usually that fame and fortune, because then they can't do the shows if everyone's not injected. So we're not going to make all this money. I'm not going to be able to do the shows with all these people. Or maybe he's like part of some occult society.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, okay. So what I feel like a lot of the way that they control people is they give them power and influence, and then the second they step out of line, then they lose all that power and influence. So people with power and influence are incentivized not to go off the reservation at all, and you can look at even people in the alternative media scene, they're not going to talk about certain issues because they are disincentivized to. The second you start talking about certain issues, then you start losing your banking, then you start losing your social media, you know what I mean? And so it's like a very clear and concise thing. Like, as long as you stay in this lane and you only talk about approved things that you're not allowed to talk about, then you'll be okay. But like in a person like Dave Grohl's position, yeah, I think it could have been as benign as like, hey man, we can't do the show unless everybody's vaccinated. Like, just take one for the team, bro, that sort of thing. Or it could be something more nefarious, as like he was an operative that was paid by the pharmaceutical industry to kind of toe that line and say those things publicly, like going on interviews and talking, how important it is for everybody to get vaccinated. I'm sure he got some kickback or some sort of incentive from some sort of pharmaceutical company or something. Or it could be so as dark as like, a ritual sacrifice type of deal. Like, it could be any and all. But, I just think that like the music industry as a whole, it shows that they're cowards, really what it is because they didn't want to lose what they have, right? Even I would like to think that I would do the same thing. If I was like a rich, famous guy, like, I would still like to say I'd hold on to my principles to the point where, like, if I was faced with a decision like that, we're like, oh, we have to cancel your tour if not everybody takes the shots, or if you don't take the shots, we'll cancel your tour. I'd be like, great, I'm gonna stay at home all summer. You know what I mean? Like an Ice Cube. Like Ice Cube did that. He said he turned down a movie role, $9 million movie role, because he didn't want to take the shot. Like something like that. Like, you can actually propel yourself even more and be even more of a badass as opposed to capitulating. But I think I just think it's cowardice. It's literally just cowardice. Like, he's just like, I'd like to say like Dave Grohl, at the very most benign, he is a coward, absolute coward. And then from there, it just gets worse. So the nicest thing I can say about Dave Grohl is that he is a pathetic coward. And then I can only say worse from there.
You brought up something I bring up often now because I think it's important for ourselves. I'm also a consumer of a lot of podcasting and alternative independent media. And David Icke coined the term mainstream alternative media, amazing poly, new narrative network. And I think this is something we have to continue talking about because it's a danger, because there's people like, sitting next to us who are other independent alternative media who are not who they really pretend to be. And there are some of the more obvious outfits. You mentioned some of the more mainstream alternative, like your Daily Wire, and and they've got certain talking points. But what do you think could if we don't pay attention, what are some dangers with the mainstream alternative media? I feel like I've brought up in the past, even InfoWars has been involved.
Oh yeah,
with there's been seeping in some Gnostic New Age weird stuff. But do you have any thoughts on the whole mainstream alternative media narrative stuff?
Of course, man. And so I think that I think at the end of the day, it's important for none of us to like outsource our critical thinking to anybody else, right? We might look to some of these people to kind of point us in the right direction, but I've been made a fool because I heard something on a show and I went and like boldly claimed that in like a room full of people, and then someone like showed me like, actually no, and I was like, damn it, how dare you? Like, you know what I mean? And so it's like, if you don't want to make a fool of yourself, at the very least, don't ever take anybody at their word. Go look into it for yourself. You know what I mean? There's always misinterpretations and games of telephone that happen. And, maybe you got this fact wrong, but it's a big fact and it kind of negates your whole argument. So, really what it comes down to is like not putting anybody on such a pedestal where they're the source of your thoughts, right? And so I like to mix it up too. I like to have a wide variety of people that I listen to, and I like to look into things myself. I like doing research and I like looking things up. And during 2020, I got a real knack for that. But there's the phenomenon of, and you see it a lot with Trump is a good example. Okay. So what they do is they build, or even, I mean, I've heard Alex Jones actually kind of articulate this, like in himself, he described how they, in the mind of the enemy, in the mind of like all the New York Times reading, like, normies, in their mind, they see Alex Jones as like this gigantic edifice of like evil and everything, because they can build that person up into anything that they want. It kind of works in the reverse where, like a guy like Trump, where you can build him into anything you want, right? You can build this like the way Alex described himself as like a straw man. You can build a straw man character that you can attach all of this hate and everything to, and then that becomes the focal point of all this like rage and all this attention. But like with a Trump, like you can build up this character who's like this edifice that represents so many things. He represents like to the MAGA people, like he represents so much of this stuff. And now all you have to do is just take that one symbol. It's not even a person at that point. It becomes a symbol, and you can steer it. If you want to steer it over here, you can steer it over here. If you want to steer it over there, you can steer it over there. And the people will migrate, and because their eyes are focused solely on that thing, and you can literally move the consciousness of the people around as if it's like just like steering like an object, like a bouncy ball. And so once we become like that, the idea of like the idol, once you create like an idol in your mind of something, then you're susceptible to being misled, because that idol is really kind of like a golem, like a representative of some idea that it can then infect you. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like when we look at, and that could be easily, like I heard, okay, I don't know if this is true. I haven't fact checked yet, but I just heard that Tucker Carlson came out with like a line of like nicotine patches. Have you heard about this? Hold on, let me just.
Or was that a while back or something?
No, let me see. Tucker Carlson plans to start a nicotine pouch company after deciding Zyn is not a brand for men. Oh, so your little Zyn packs are a little too gay. So we're going to start So you're going to buy your nicotine from me. So basically, Tucker Carlson is now in the big tobacco business. So, you know what I'm saying? So they you build up this guy, you give him all this clout. He's probably a CIA agent anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like you give this like guy all this clout and status, and then it's like, and now we're going to sell the kids nicotine patches. It's like, oh, come on, dude. Really? Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? So it's interesting to see like things like that, where it's like, or like when a hero, like someone that we saw as a hero, like it's cut down to size or chopped down. Like, it's just like, we can avoid all that by not like attaching so much to these people. And so but I think they know that too. I think they know, the idea of controlled opposition is real. I mean, if you look at like the Republican political party, like the Republicans that are in office, they don't do anything like, well, the Democrat, I mean, the Republicans are there to make it look like they're doing something against the Democrats, and then the Democrats are there to make it look like they're doing something against the Republicans. But all the while, the narrative and the agenda keeps marching forward, and we lose more rights year after year. That's just all it is. Like, it's there to give you the idea that something's happening when really nothing is. So
that's the formula of the oligarchy. It works so well. You mentioned earlier, Ryan, this morning I was on the first panel of the Independent Media Alliance, and the discussion was that false binary stuff. And I've been saying this more and more. Like there's the No Agenda podcast, No Agenda, no guru, no gurus. People are. I mentioned this morning that, again, this is from my biblical worldview, that the Bible implies that we are all, human nature is, we are made to worship. We were made to worship God, so we have this urge to worship. Call it worship, or the unhealthy version is idolatry. We have to idolize something, and so people, they worship, they idolize these figures, the Trump figures, the Putin figures. Putin bricks is going to save us from the evil West, or Elon Musk or whatever, or some Alex Jones or Dave Grohl. And I make the point is, that's not the right way to do it, because then you get emotional, you get attached to these people, and everyone is no one is perfect. And so I think it's wise. That's what I do. Like in my weekly news roundup, I like to have all these different factual good sources, and then people can go think for yourself. Look through the sources, think for yourself. And what you were referencing earlier, it's getting worse and worse, even in alternative media, even in good people, well-meaning people. I had a past podcast of mine. I won't name them. I very much respect them, but they've got a big account and they shared fake news. One of the story was the WHO, I think last year, that the Mexican government was rejecting the WHO treaty. And I'm a Mexican national. I speak Spanish. I actually read the document, and it's like, no, total fake news. The only thing that happened was some Mexican doctors, scientists did a petition to the Mexican government to look into the WHO, and petitions are a dime a dozen. Like, you can petition until the cows come home. The Mexican government's not going to care. So it was basically nothing was going to happen. But this person was saying Mexico rejects the WHO, which was the farthest thing from the truth. And then people don't retract it. And then, I retweet it. And then I'm like, oh, I got to unretweet it. I got to delete it. And so we have to be so careful, because it's getting really bad with so many of our peers falling for this. And just people have to do not tweet anything until you actually check the news story. And also, heroes. I think the theme of making our us individually creating our own stuff. Steve Poikonen talks about creating our own culture. And so you're making music now. It's like, we don't have to wait for Dave Grohl to make a new album.
No.
You can do something, no?
Exactly, man. That's really a big part of this. Okay, well, started off as just like a hobby. Like, really, I didn't have like an amp. And so, I have a little amp. It's a crappy little amp. And I started using guitar or GarageBand because it has all these different like amp modules, and I can make my guitar through my headphones sound like whatever I want, dude. I can make it sound like just like a super nice amp with all these effects and everything. And so I was just really just jamming myself, and I started tinkering around, started recording, and it really took on a life of its own. And now, okay, very early on in the process, like I would say, because I've been working on this for about a year and a half now, like right before, so like about a year and a half in production. Some of the songs, several years, like some of these songs are like several years old, but I realized like the songs started taking on a life of their own, and they started just kind of just materializing before me. And like the vision of what each song was supposed to be kind of was already in my head, and it just took a second for it to kind of emerge. And then the other thing too is like, so if you guys go to rebunkedrecords.com, there's a link to the YouTube channel, or if you just search Rebunked Records on YouTube, I made videos for all the songs. Like each song has its own separate like video with a whole different like vibe. And when I was making the videos, that's when I was like in this like ultimate flow state where I was like, okay, this isn't like, there's some synchronicities like with some of the footage I was using that lined up with some of the lyrics, especially in the song The Hood Rat Boogie. Actually, like, that's like the funny song on the album, about like, it's basically about a guy who's like, I don't know, he's dating a gal who's basically a tweaker chick, like dating a tweaker chick, and he doesn't understand why like all of his stuff keeps disappearing, and it's kind of just a fun little tongue-in-cheek song, but it's pretty funny. Like, anybody from like Oregon will get a kick out of it or whatever. But anyway, so basically, like, so the synchronicities, like in that song in particular, like with some of the footage I was using, I was like, there's a point where I was like, okay, I'm not even a part of this process. I am just the vessel that is being used to kind of just channel this into existence, because I was just like, just so blown away by like, man, this is just like, it's coming together in a way that I couldn't even plan in a million years if I wanted to. And so then it became like, now I'm at like, okay, now we're trying to like, now I'm so confident around it. It's like, okay, now we're trying to like insert ourselves into the culture. And I'm not trying to sound like, delusional, but I think that's a big part of what we should all be trying to do. It's like, that's what you do with your show. That's what all of us in the alternative media that are we're trying to do, is we're trying to, get our message across to the other side, where we know there's all those like lonely souls on the other side that are just hungry for something new, hungry for truth, hungry for authenticity, hungry for something new, but they can't find it where they're fishing. They're like fishing in an empty pond, right? And so like all I want is for like my music or my shows to like reach the people that like maybe don't even know they need it or don't even know they want it. So that's what I feel. It's like there's like a higher calling to it, and I know that you experienced that with the podcasting and all your endeavors with that. It's like this is a calling. Like, I don't even know why I do podcasts. Yeah, it's just like a college. It's like something in me that week in and week out, it's just like, I'm just like almost reflexively, it's like, oh, got to book a guest. Oh, got a show tonight. Got to make the thumbnail. Yep. Got to do all these things. It's like, it's just something that's driving me forward. It's interesting.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I really, since 2012 is when I started.
That's awesome, man.
YouTubing, podcasting, and I still don't know why I do it. Honestly, it's what you just said. I just felt this urge. Like, I didn't even think it through. I just started doing it. There's some tips or advice for people wanting to do stuff like this, but it's just like this urge. Like, I need someone to talk to. I need to. Next week I'm going to have on a guest who's from, I think he's a Kurd, to talk about Kurdistan. And it's like, I've never broached that topic, and I've always wondered about it. It's like, I want to know about Kurdistan.
Nice.
And then I'm bringing on another guest to talk about something else, and it's just like, I want to know.
Yeah.
That's basically my main driver, is like, I want to know what's going on. And podcasting has become basically, one of the best ways to learn about anything. I had a great based review just the other day. Someone writes my latest Apple Podcast review. They said, based. I'm a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy, and this podcast is better information than anything I learned in 4 years from my professor. And, I used to also be a professor. And so, but it's true, myself being a student, being a former professor, for me, this is a much better way about learning of the world, because, when you're in the classroom, you're constrained by the ivory towers. I've been censored in academia, and it's rubbish. University these days is just, it's garbage. It's junk. It's part of this globalist indoctrination camp. And I did also, you mentioned Oregon. You made me think, Everclear, Art Alexicus, I think they're from Oregon. Back in the day, they have that Santa Monica song, and I was obsessed.
Oh,
with
Everclear, yeah, of course,
Everclear,
the band, of course,
Junior high, I had and he wrote about drugs and alcohol and relationships, and so that brought back some memories. And I used to have a Vox AC30. That's the amp that Brian May of Queen uses in the Edge of YouTube.
Oh, nice.
And this was probably like 15 years ago. Plus, I actually bought a classic. It cost me like $2,300, and it was amazing. I actually obtained the actual tone of U2, and I bought one of the delays that the Edge used, and I actually had the Where the Streets Have No Name sound. Like, I actually had it, and I was able to play it with the delay. It was so much fun. But I had to, and that's the cool thing about buying the classic amps and guitars. Yeah. I was able to sell it for the same price that I bought it later. Some Chicago, because I'm from Chicago. He showed up. I think I put it on Craigslist, and he came to my door. The Chicago producer musician, and he wanted to pay me by check. And my dad's like, no, because checks can bounce. And he's like, come back with cash.
Nice, that's hilarious.
So,
yeah,
but also, and culture too. I don't even think about this sometimes. I went to a Ron Paul conference last year, and there are people come up to me, hey, I listen to your podcast like on Rumble or this platform. I'm like, really? No way. Like, I can't believe I actually have a brand, and it's impacting people and people's lives, and I really got to get on my merch. It's the store is half open. I got to finalize that, because that's part of, impacting.
You have a t-shirt guy. Do you have a t-shirt guy?
I do. It's the same. I think you're saying
okay, good.
Ryan, right?
Yeah, Ryan, Big Frog t-shirt dude. Yes, he's like, talk about like the alternative media. He's the t-shirt guy for like all the mainstream, like alternative, or not mainstream, the alternative, like the actual alternative media people, like Steve Schaub, my dude. Those guys crush so hard. The cool thing about them is that, so they're in Beaverton, right outside of Portland, Oregon. So they're in the belly of the beast. But then there's you've had Amanda on, right? I think
on my TNT show.
Yeah. Anyway, so her and Ryan, like they're the employees there, and they just listen to all of our shows during the day, like while they're working in the shop. So their shop is just basically like our shows, like all the time. So it's like, it's hilarious. So
yeah, but it's because I haven't had a time. I'm really hoping to set aside time this next week. Nice. Finalize the designs, because I actually have bookmarked like your merch store and Steve's to use as examples for what I can put out. So hopefully soon I get that out there, and I do want to bring it back to the New World Order. You play on universal basic income.
Yeah.
Where do you think where are we at with the whole Great Reset,
Yeah.
New World Order. What's next? I feel like we're in the eye of the storm.
Yeah.
It's going to be insane going forward. My biggest concern are the algorithm ghetto, as I like to say. I live in a 15-minute city. This month, it was officially announced by mainstream Mexican government Twitter accounts that Mexico City is going to be divided into multiple 15-minute cities. Other mayors in other parts of Mexico are announcing their 15-minute cities. Like,
now, is this the type of deal where you can't leave? Like, there's a certain like barrier that you're not allowed to go.
They don't tell. I mean, they don't tell you that. People who study this, we understand that they're going to sell it to us. Oh, it's more walkable area, and you're going to have everything near to you, so you don't have to leave. And it's like, wait a minute, that's like the Patrick McGoohan's village in The Prisoner. That's like a ghetto where the Jews were boxed into. And then you can sort of extrapolate further, because if we then Mexican government, this is just an example for Mexico. This is happening everywhere, every nation. But they're rolling out their Mexican CBDC, Mexican peso CBDC, and it's like you can just imagine then with geolocation and geofencing, if you leave. I'm in Guadalajara. If I leave Guadalajara, I'm just thinking at some future point, and there's no cash, and I go outside of the state, my money might not function, as an example. So this is kind of what I'm concerned about. We've also got the threats of World War III. And so what are your thoughts on where we're at with everything that's going on the planet?
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So, the album kind of just promotes like, don't, it's going to be all right, guys. It's great. But, I mean, that's the only attitude that I can like allow myself to have. Like, I'm not going to afford myself to live in fear. But in terms of like, from a pragmatic perspective, like things to keep an eye on, like, I definitely see how, stuff going on in the Middle East, for example, are kind of really reaching a boiling point. I feel like America is very likely going to get sucked into some sort of conflict over there. And, whether or not that's going to start by some sort of act here at home, like I just would not be surprised if there was another 9/11 type event. I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, I don't know, man, like the Iran situation is very concerning. Like, I think that's probably my biggest concern is some sort of like domestic terrorist event or domestic. I'm going to say that it's going to be a false flag instigated by Israel to get us to go to war in the Middle East. That's kind of what I'm thinking, like something like that. That we'll never know, but I'm sure like that's what it's going to look like, right? So there you go. And then just to carry out their will in the Middle East. Now, that being said, the financial stuff, like it's so interesting because like in my town, like gas prices have gone down like $1 like in the last month. Like it's crazy. Like it's down to like $2.60 in some places. And if I use my little rewards card from the grocery store gas station, it takes like. It's like I got gas like $2.10 like the other, and so in US dollars, like normally before it was like $3.70, $3.60. So it's like this is crazy, you know what I mean? So it's like a math. It's like, so what does that tell me? Does that mean that like all the problems, geopolitical problems, have gone away? Like to your average person, they're gonna see the gas prices drop like $1 like in a week and be like, yeah, like the world, it's world peace. Like it's complete world peace. Like that's the only barometer to say whether or not there's any like global conflict. Oh, the price is up at $3.60. I guess there's problems in the Middle East. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. And so it's like, to me, it's like, yeah, maybe everything's going to be fine. But, I'm just, the economic piece is definitely concerning when you start to study and you realize that like, 80% or maybe more now at this point of all the money that's ever been printed in the history of, since the Federal Reserve, like over 100 years, all like 80% of the money that's in existence right now was printed since 2020. And that was under Trump and Biden. It's been like this huge money grab, and it almost feels like the complete late stage, the final and the last money grab that they're going to possibly be able to extract before forcing us onto another system. Right. But even with that, dude, I have hope. It's like, okay, you go to full digital currency and it's all this crap. Then it's like, okay, then you're going to create a huge black market. You're going to create a huge like barter and trade economy, and then for me, I think the best way to protect yourself from something like that is to have community, have people around you that you know and you trust, and that have, there's this little farm that I go to like help out on the weekends sometimes, just help them pull weeds or, harvest stuff whenever, and you get to leave with like a big bag of vegetables. So it's like I spend the time to build the connections with people. There's this like last night at Vaxxed, there was like 20 people from our little medical freedom group that we meet every other Tuesday night. And it's like, I'm really trying to put in the effort to build community here, because I know in case something does happen, then we have each other to rely on, and we can like kind of exit together to the extent that that's possible, and kind of like together we can have confidence. So it's like, whether it's a war, whether it's a complete financial collapse, I'm feeling fairly confident that we'd be able to withstand. I've got my preps, I've got like, community. And so I'm not fearful of it, but those are the big things I'm looking at. I'm thinking like, the Middle East situation's not. I mean, they're blowing up people's cell phones over there, dude. That stuff's crazy. This is like a higher level of like warfare that I've seen in a long time. Like that's some crazy ass shit, dude.
when I saw that, and also solar panels or solar energy, it was reported it was being blown up.
Wow.
And I, up until now, it's been like, for those of us,
that's a chutzpah right there.
Those of us that are studying deep politics, and we read the white papers, the Rockefeller panel reports, the cyber polygons, and it's just like, up until now, it's just been so predictable. We know where they're going. It's like, yeah, we know their plan for digital ID. Oh, look, Mexico City's rolling out digital ID, 15-minute cities. It's like, yeah, everything's going according to plan. It's so boring. We need better psyops. And, this is not how I expected cyber polygon would go, with thousands of exploding pagers and phones and solar panels. Like, thank you, Klaus. Thank you at least for making it more, throwing in a few twists and turns there. Yeah. It's not as dull. And people always some people write annoying comments on, the stream this morning.
Of course.
The crew. What's the solution? It's like, you're this, you figured out. Don't ask me. Yeah. But I think what you laid out, I always think you do what you can with what you got, where you're at. There's no real, look at the history of humanity. People have gone through world wars, through totalitarianism, and they figure out, it's what we said earlier, there's nothing new under the sun. So there are always the basic things, your friends, your family, your network. How did people survive during the world wars, right? Farms, the religious persecutions, people were living in forests and caves. You need food source, you need a water source, you need friends to hide you from, if you're a dissident from the tyrants, or somewhere you can go to hide, or even if you're living within the system, you need, as you mentioned, black market. So it's really like, I'm tired of people asking what's the solution, and I think for me, it's doing stuff. It's making a record. It's making an app like the Unjected. It's starting a business. It's starting a farm or working with farmers, making babies, stuff like that. I think it's, producing. I think that is one of the solutions. And so, any other thoughts on the way forward?
I mean, that's it, dude. Like, I'm a huge advocate of like just the community building aspect. And I think right now, so what we saw in 2020, so we started our own little Freedom Cell group, and we were doing meetups all the time. And I found the value of gathering with groups of like-minded people. Like, that was the only thing that carried me through 2020. But there was a sense of urgency amongst all the people that were showing up, because like, there was so much uncertainty and fear and craziness in the air that we felt like this was our only hope. And then I want to encourage everybody that you don't have to wait until things start to hit the fan to like, then all of a sudden you start scrambling and be like, oh my God, like, where am I going to get this or that? Like, now when things are relatively kind of calm, like it's just like, it's like a fully automatic psyop cannon just getting blasted at us, dude. It's just every like hour on the hour, it's like psyop. It's just like, but you can get to a state where the psyops just kind of just roll down your back, kind of washes over you like a duck floating over the water, and you're just gonna laugh at it. You're like, oh, that's hilarious, dude. They're blowing up oh, dude, they're blowing up cell phones, dude. That's some crazy shit. So you know what I mean? But it's like, take this opportunity when things are relatively normal. Go find a group in your community that's doing regular meetups, and I'll make some suggestions. There's a group called Make Americans Free Again. It's a local here. I mean, there might be one some in Mexico, I'm sure. I mean, there's not like, any reason why there wouldn't be, but Make Americans Free Again under Dr. Pam Popper. They have been encouraging in-person meetups since 2020. And that's the group I meet with every other Tuesday night. That's where all the people were at last night from Vax. They're awesome folks. And it's kind of under the banner of medical freedom. It's not a political, it has like the Make America Great Again connotation, but it's not a political group at all. It's strictly just like medical freedom. And Pam Popper's organization, she's like a lawyer. They're suing like Equal Health Alliance. Like Pam Popper would be a great interview too if you haven't connected with her. She's awesome.
Hold on. Let me share my screen. What is this? Can you see my screen?
Let's see. Oh, Pam Popper, there she is. Yeah,
on
what's up.
This show September 2000, almost to the 2 years ago.
Totally.
So I had her on. She's
Pam
cool.
Popper's great. So their group does in-person meetups. Freedomcells.org. I know that's a worldwide thing. So you go to freedomcells.org, you look for, it's like a big map. You find a spot on the map and there'll be a little pin near your area. And there might be a group that's doing meetups. If not, start your own and then start organizing and hosting in-person meetups. And you can do it at like restaurants or at the park. Beartaria, if you guys aren't familiar with Beartaria, there's a Beartaria Times app where a lot of people, regardless of how people feel about Owen Benjamin, the comedian himself, but like, the group, the community, that's like a lot of people that are doing big things like homesteading, having big families. Like that's kind of the attitude in Beartaria. So that's a great place to meet people. And then Unjected, we're encouraging people to do in-person gatherings. So with that, if you want to set up an unjected meetup in your area, like at a restaurant or a park or whatever, people are doing them all over the place. We've really been pushing it. Set up a meetup. All you have to do is find a location, pick a time and a date, make a flyer, or just send us the information and we'll make the flyer and we'll blast it out on our social media, on the show, on our email list. And we've been getting people like huge unjected meetups from all over the place. Like there was one in Dallas, Texas a few weeks ago. And there was people flying in from like Denver, Phoenix. They were emailing us like, yeah, I'm flying in from Denver to this meetup, dude. And there's one in LA on Saturday, a big meetup. And there's like guest speakers there. I know Sam Tripoli is going to be there at the Unjected meetup in Los Angeles. So it's like, that is the solution, you guys. You have to just take the effort to get up off the couch and go find your like-minded people and use some of those resources to find them. Because once you get plugged in, once you get connected, once you realize you're not alone, I feel like so much of the despair is putting us in a little isolated box and making us feel like we're alone in all this. Like once you realize you're not alone and that there's so many awesome people doing amazing things that feel the same way you do, all that fear just washes away, like just gone. Like there's nothing. You realize that like, we got this.
Yeah, and what you said, one of my solutions, for myself, I feel like I have my own solution. Is I'm a Christian, and for me, my solution is Jesus. So whatever happens, I've got my basic instructions before leaving Earth, the Bible, right? And so I'm already set, I feel, for myself when it comes to solutions. But I also have my local group, as you mentioned, which is different groups, but my church network. If something happens, if I get sick, there was times when I first came to Mexico and it was the first time I ever got sick in Mexico, and a bunch of people from church came to my house. Like, are you okay?
Yes.
What can we do? So if someone doesn't have a job, there are people in our church who, widows or women whose husbands have left them, and people pitch in and they help support these people. That's just an example. So economic difficulty, other sorts of difficulties. And so whatever group it is that you plug into. And so I feel like I've got my solution.
That's awesome.
The way I see the world. And so people need to find their own. If it's maybe my solution isn't your solution, but don't say that, where are my solutions? You have to deal with it yourself. And any other thoughts then for us?
Well, I mean, I think that you just nailed it right there. I mean, like kind of like all of these other like emulating kind of the fellowship of a church is really like kind of what all these other groups really, maybe I would say, without even maybe knowing it, that's what they're striving to achieve. So yeah, church fellowship and just like the camaraderie and like the willingness to help each other. Like that's a great place to start. If you don't know anywhere else to start, or if you're kind of in a maybe more rural area, you're not sure like where to go to find community, like a church would be a great place to go to start to find that for sure. But yeah, man, I mean, really just, I just hope everybody goes checks out the music for now. Like I do podcasts. I got like this Clip Genie thing going on, but like really the biggest thing is, I really want folks to go check out the music, and just cause I'm proud of it. And I think it does have like, half the songs are kind of like anti-New World Order songs. The other half are kind of just good songs, in my opinion. There's one song about a guy who and I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, but it's a funny blues song about a guy who it's called Rock the Boat. It's the song Rock the Boat. It's like a blues song where a guy his baby don't left him and she's over there on the other side of the world. So he gets a boat and he's gonna float around the world, and I'm gonna find my baby. She's out there somewhere, and then he runs into a giant ice wall and discovers that the Earth might be like the heliocentric model may not be all it's correct. So anyway, it's a fun song, and then it's like a truth drop for like 3 minutes. It's pretty funny. It's just funny. It's fun. We're having fun. And it pokes fun at like the globe earthers. It pokes fun at the flat earthers. So it's like, it's a good little time. So it's like, try not to take it too seriously. But then there's some stuff where like, then we really drill down and try to make a point. And then there's like some ripping guitar solo. So it's just like, go check it out, you guys. It's fun. It's a blast.
I am a globe earther, but I can still have fun listening to songs like that.
But watch the video, because one of the best things about it is like, like I said, I don't really know one way or the other, but I do know that NASA is full of shit. That is 100% true.
We can both agree agree
so,
on that.
And so the video, like, it kind of puts them on blast a little bit with some of their own footage. It's like some of their green screen glitches in the International Space Station, and some of the foolery that they try to pass off as spacewalks with like, oh, but there's a little air bubble floating up through the water right there in your official NASA footage of a spacewalk. Do you mind explaining that one, sir? Like a little air bubble floating up like that?
You're making me think of, just real quick, other, I wish it would be nice to see more music that is talking about this stuff, anti-New World Order. Another, some old music that comes to mind is this Australian rock band called Cog. They've written some good anti-New World Order stuff, and Shooter Jennings did a themed album on New World Order stuff, which was
nice,
excellent. And you mentioned Clip Genie, by the way. I've seen that. Is that something of yours? Is proprietary or?
Yeah, well, yeah, dude. So you're a No Agenda fan, right? You No Agenda guy, right?
I don't listen regularly, but
okay. Are you familiar with Bingit.io? Their little tool. Okay, so Bingit.io, which is now noagenda.clipgenie.com. Go test it out. Go try it out. Basically, this guy named Dean, Sir Deanonymous from the No Agenda community, created this tool called Bingit.io, which basically created a searchable, basically created a search engine for the No Agenda show. So you could type in any word or phrase, and you could find any time that word or phrase was ever mentioned in the show, in all 17 years of the show. So it's a pretty valuable tool. So I approached Dean, and I was actually working with Ryan at the time, and I was trying to get something like that for The Last American Vagabond, because wouldn't it be nice to have like The Last American Vagabond, like us be able to like search like a keyword or a phrase to find that every time he's talked about this topic, you know what I mean? Right? Great idea. So ended up not working out with Ryan, but I was like, well, Dean, basically I approached Dean. I was like, can we develop this because No Agenda is audio only. So he already had it figured out for audio only. I was like, can we do this for video podcasts? Can we create search engines for people's shows? And he figured it out. So, so that now, and then we took it a step further, where now if you do a search and you find something you like, you can highlight the text and you can export a clip directly from the transcript and then share it on social media and whatnot. So right now we have my show, obviously. So if you go to rebunked.clipgenie.com, you can search my show and make clips of it. And then our first like real client, I would say, is Grand Theft World. We have Richard Grove, Grand Theft World. So if you go to gtw.clipgenie.com, you can mess around with it. Type in any word or phrase. You can see anytime it's ever come up in the history of Grand Theft World. You can watch the video from that point. You can click on it. And then if you want, you can highlight the text, export the clip. So it's a new podcast tool that we're developing, and it's pretty legit. I think it's pretty exciting.
I'm gonna need to approach this Dean guy.
No, talk to me, man. I'm the hype man. I'm the marketing guy.
All right,
he's the genius behind the operation, and I'm the guy. I'm out here hyping it. So
we're gonna talk after the recording. And so, all right, all of your links are in the description. I will be purchasing your album direct from the website. And I think it's important, sometimes I get publishers to send me books of guests for free, but in this case, like we are peers here. And I think for, you could probably send me the album for free, but I wouldn't even want that. I think it's important to support the hard work that you've done. I think it's important that we support each other like that. So all your links are in the description. And if people have not subscribed to Rebunked podcast, I'm subscribed on all of your channels.
Yeah, you're the man, dude.
On your Telegram, on your Rumble. I make it a point. Like I go and I take like 5 minutes and I'm like, I subscribe to your BitChute, Rumble, Telegram, Twitter,
Okay.
Substack. And it's like, I think people need to do that because that helps all of us. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, dude. I thank you, dude. You're the man. You've always been the man. I look up to you a lot. You're just like, I just appreciate you and all the work you do, man, very much.
And you know, thanks for the whole American Liberty Award experience last time. Was so much fun, and I learned a lot from you as well. And so I'll be looking forward to your second album.
Yeah, second album, and hopefully second American Liberty Awards. We got a meeting this weekend. We're going to try and pull off another one, so we'll see. So,
all right, thanks for being on Geopolitics.
Thanks, Roy, man. Thank you.